Alright guys, the cat's out of the bag. I got a Nikon Z8 right here. And you've probably seen it in my recent video where I, took this bad boy out for a spin. So I've been using the Nikon Z8 for almost a month behind the scenes now, and I think I've used it enough to share my first impressions on what it's like coming from a Fujifilm system. Now, I've been seeing a lot of Fuji shooters heading over to Nikon because, Fujifilm has gone full R-word. They have stock issues, their autofocusing sucks still. They promised firmware updates, and it still hasn't happened yet of this recording. So I guess people just got tired of being dicked around and they can't afford to wait for things to get fixed, and I can't blame them, Nikon's been making great cameras over the past couple of years, and making a camera like the Nikon ZF has piqued a lot of people's interest, especially Fuji shooters. And that's because they got that retro camera design. It looks like a Fujifilm X-T5. But again, it's in a full frame form, which is freaking nuts. Nikon's been putting in the work. And the one camera that actually piqued my interest was always the Nikon Z8. I had the opportunity to get it for a great deal used, so I couldn't pass it up, man. Like, if my conversion is right, I think it was just a little bit less than getting a brand new Nikon Z6 III. So why the fuck not? I was thinking of getting the Z6 III. I was like, okay, this could be interesting, but in the back of my mind, the Nikon Z8 was always there, and then when that deal came, I'm just like, you know what? Let's fucking go. Let's just fucking send it. And I always wanted to test a Nikon as well, so I always heard good things about it. Like I said, I really like the moves that they were making, releasing like the Z9, the Z8, the ZF, and now the Z6 III. And again, I would like to see for myself if Nikon is the truth. This is the Nikon. This is the Nikon Z8, guys, and this camera is a fucking powerhouse. And what I noticed when I got this camera was the freaking size. This thing is freaking huge, by the way. I feel this body is bigger than the GFX 102, the medium format camera from Fujifilm that I was using a while ago. So this boy is chunky. He's thick. He's hella thick, He's a thick fella with 3 C's. So in a world where cameras are shrinking, getting smaller, compact, Nikon just said, nah, and just made a really robust and thick-ass camera. I was using it to, shoot some client work, capturing gym sessions, as well as use it for a creative shoot here. And I really like how fast and zippy the overall camera experience is. Like, when you turn on the camera, when it tracks, everything about it just seems like it just fucking flies. When I was using the 3D tracking as well, like, it was tracking the subject insanely fast, and it just felt so fast when the box was right there just moving around like this. It's like insanely quick. Forget how you feel about the Fujifilm's autofocusing, whether it's good or bad. I thought the tracking, emphasis on the tracking, by the way, I thought the tracking on the XH2S and XH2 and XT5 was quick already, right? This is like with no experience with the Nikon camera. But then trying this Z8 right here and using its 3D tracking just made it feel like I'm on another level. It's like I'm on a sports car using the Z8 versus using a regular Honda Civic when I was tracking with my Fujifilm cameras. The Z8 just seems to pick things up a little bit quicker. It can keep up with the subjects, moving and spinning around better than any current gen Fujifilm cameras, which is freaking nuts. I was also tracking seagulls the other day. These birds were just like, in the air, just juking sporadically. All right, but the Z8 could keep up. Like, mind you, most of you Nikon shooters already know this, but me as a Fuji guy, it's really impressive that it can stick to a bird and follow its quick movement and keep up with it. I don't own a long telephoto lens. I was tracking everything on the Sigma 24 to 70mm f2.8 Mark II Art Series lens, and it was great. Not only does it track better and faster, the autofocusing on the Z8 is fantastic as well. It gets the iris most of the time, but there are instances where it picks up on the eyelash instead. I will live with that because the autofocusing on the Z8 is a lot more reliable than what I got on my Fujifilm cameras. It also helps that the Nikon has like a stack sensor to help with the speed and the tracking and all that. Another thing that kind of tripped me out while using this camera was the lack of mechanical shutter plus the blackout-free EVF. So the first time I was using it, I was so confused whether or not I was taking a picture. With the mechanical shutter, right? You can tell when you're taking a picture when, the shutter closes and it does something like this, right? and you see the black in the EVF for like a split second, or you will hear the mechanical shutter click, right? On the Z8, you don't get any of that. The only way you can tell if you're taking photos are these tiny black bars on each side of the frame, and it does this every time, like. So you do have to turn on the sound to hear like a fake shutter sound, and it doesn't sound too satisfying, but I keep it in there so that I know that I'm taking a photo. But there are times where I turn that off and all I see is this, and sometimes the black bars isn't enough. You have to really pay attention to it to know that you're actually shooting. It's something that you have to get used to. And while like, you know, these tiny black bars are like popping up on each side, you do have like a blackout free EVF. So it's quite the experience. Like viewing inside the EVF makes it seem like I'm watching something in 4K 60, and it's like, it moves quite smooth and it looks hyper realistic. So it's like very cool experience that I get when I'm using the Z8. So you may be wondering what lenses I've been using with the Z8. And I've been using my Sony lenses. I do have a couple of them now, and I don't know what kind of Z lenses to get for the Z8 or Z8. I don't know, the Z8, the Nikon Z8. Am I American? Am I Canadian? How do I say it? Did we say Z? Did we say Z? I was thinking about getting the new 35mm f1.4 or the 50mm f1.4 Nikon lens that were released a couple months back. So if any of you guys have tried these lenses, let me know your thoughts, because those are the two that I want for the Z8. Or otherwise, I'm just gonna keep shooting with Sony lenses, because I bought the Megadap's E to Z Pro adapter, and I've been using my Sony 50mm f1.4 G Master lens with it, and as well the Sigma 24-70mm f2.8 Mark II art lens, both E-mount lenses. Having this adapter really opened up the more possibilities for me, because from what I see, third-party lens manufacturer tends to make Z-mount lenses later on. They usually make like the Sony E-mount or the Fuji lenses first. But again, having this adapter has been quite wonderful, because I can now adapt my Sony lenses on the Z8, and it's been a wonderful experience. The autofocus with this fucking third-party adapter works so well on the Z8. I couldn't believe it. I always thought, like, you know, I don't know about third-party algorithms. There has to be some sort of compromises, right? It has to suck. But let me tell you something. Nope, it doesn't suck. Using the G Master lens with this adapter has been awesome. The autofocusing works quite well for photos. I haven't tried it for videos yet, so I don't know. I can't touch on that. But again, when I was using this, I've been getting a lot of portraits where it just hits the iris, and it's doing better than Fujifilm, which I don't get. Now, the question for me is, does the autofocusing get better if I use Nikon native lenses? Does anyone know? Again, like Nikon shooters, let me know your thoughts down below, because I think the setup is really good for me so far. So I don't know what to do. I can buy Z-mount lenses, or I can just save the money and just use Sony lenses that I got. So how are the Fuji fanboys going to defend this? Because like, a third-party adapter company managed to create an adapter with code that allows a Nikon camera to communicate seamlessly with a Sony E-mount lenses, delivering a reliable autofocusing system. And it just highlights how flawed Fujifilm's autofocusing system is if a small piece of metal that links a Nikon camera with a Sony lens performs better. Honestly, again, I was just expecting some sort of like malfunction, or just lack of compatibility or the reliability to not be that good. But instead, it works smoother than my Fujifilm autofocusing with Fujifilm native lenses, which is pretty wild. Again, I'm not an engineer. I don't know what goes on behind the scene, but this to me, just the optics of it just looks bad in my eyes. How can a third-party adapter be that good? You know, be that bridge to make things so good? I don't know. The buttons and dials on the Nikon is something that I'm still getting used to. If you're a Nikon shooter, I'm sure you're already used to it by now. But me shooting with Fuji and then Sony, and now having to learn Nikon system as well, I'm not used to how things are done over here yet. You have to hold down the ISO button and then change it with the back rear dial to you know, adjust your ISO settings. Now, this reminds me of the old DSLR days, right? I believe that's how you did it back then. Whereas, you know, the Sony cameras, to change your ISO, all you got to do is just rotate that rear wheel dial at the back. You got something like Fujifilm where you can just rotate the dial on top of Fujifilm X-T5, right? So again, each systems do things a little bit differently, and since I'm new to Nikon, I would need some time getting acquainted with this setup and just get used to everything. I gotta mention the EVF, because on paper, it doesn't look like much when it's compared to something like The Sony a7R5, the EVF on the Z8 comes in at 3.68 million dots, and the Sony a7R5 is like around 8 or 9 million dots. Even my Fujifilm X-T5 has 3.69 million dots. But after using the Nikon Z8 and the EVF, I can say that it doesn't feel like a 3.68 million dot EVF. It's actually sharp and it's brighter in there. So this was the only thing that bugged me about the Z8 when I was researching about it, because I was thinking between, should I get the Z8 or should I, go for the Sony a7R5? I do appreciate a good EVF, but after using the Z8, I am quite satisfied and content with it. It actually looks better than the Fujifilm's X-T5's EVF, if I'm being honest. Now, I haven't done any video stuff yet, but maybe I'll try to grab some sample footage to share with you guys when I make a more detailed review about the Nikon Z8. But as for now, the video specs are insane, and I'll get you guys some video footage as soon as I can. A battery life on the Z8 was decent. I keep hearing about how these batteries are good. It does feel like it depletes faster than my Fujifilm batteries, but using it for several hours, just taking photos only, I thought it was fine. I think I've only changed the battery once, but again, your mileage may vary. Now, when it comes to the photo quality, the Z8 is a 45 megapixel camera, and it looks different from Sony's and Fuji's. Whereas the Sony imaging processing really sharpens up your photos, it makes it look very crispy. I find the Z8's photos to be on the softer side. It doesn't have that crispy look that you get on the Sony, and I'm cool with that. But all I have to say is I really dig the photos I've gotten with the Nikon. Even though I said that, the Nikon photos tends to look softer, it doesn't mean that it's soft. The Nikons, the images that I got from Nikons are still sharp. And again, this is my first time using a Nikon, so I'm still trying to understand how the RAW files work. But once I get some more time under my belt, I'm sure I will have more to say about that. But as for now, I do really like the output that I'm getting from the Z8. The Z8 is like a high-performance sports car. It's all about speed, it's all about horsepower, and it's all about the top-tier performance. I'm looking forward to taking it on more excursions around Portugal. It's just stepping out of my comfort zone and try to capture some landscapes more. But I'm liking what I've seen so far, but I'll wait until I get more time under my belt with this camera to give you my final thoughts. It's a hefty camera, but that's nothing for me because I just hit a bench PR the other day. I benched 130 kilos, which is 286 pounds for 5 reps. So again, this beefy camera is light work. It ain't nothing to a G. If you're curious about the ETZ adapter or the Nikon Z8, I'll leave the links down below. And let me know your thoughts on the Nikon system. Should I try shooting with native lenses, or am I good just using Sony E-mount lenses with the ETZ adapter? Let me know your thoughts down below, and subscribe for more Nikon content plus Fuji plus Sony content as well. I appreciate your support, and thanks so much.